Base Nation, what is good? What is good? All right, kind of fired up for this stream because there's a lot to go over. There's a lot to go over in this one. All right, so hope you're strapped in. And I mean, it's up to you if you want to take notes, but try to remember all this is like, I don't know, it's like pulling teeth. There's a lot of stats to go over. We're going to talk about a lot of the stats that the woke left like to talk about. Not the stats, but these terminologies that the woke left like to use. So, and it's important because, well, when we're out there dating, most likely these girls are going to be spewing these kinds of things. And it's like, how do we navigate that, right? Not only do we, okay, look, first of all, I wouldn't ever get into conversations with women about political stuff. All right. That's just for one. But having this kind of like know-how in the back of your mind is really important, because then you can kind of assess where this girl is at mentally and stuff like that. Okay. And then even on the political spectrum. But most girls really don't even know what the hell they're talking about. Okay. They virtue signal and they go with whatever is trending and whatnot. So, okay. But we're going to talk a little bit about all that in a minute here. But let me get some housekeeping out of the way. So this is the end of the year stream. I'm not going to probably do any streams until next year, which is like only a couple days away. But yeah, I mean, there's not really much to go over in terms of end of the year stuff. This is kind of me just rambling and getting out, some content out there for you guys, so that you can not only will you level up, but it'll help me kind of elevate my content, because I want to talk about other stuff, right? I mean, the dating stuff is all good, but I'm tired of putting it behind a paywall and all that stuff. So I'm just going to put it all out there for free so everyone can have access to it and have a new way of thinking in terms of, relationships and how it's done and whatnot, right? And so, because I've been in the trenches for like 6-7 years, been doing this for quite some time. I haven't really put myself out there as much in terms of social media land, but here's my attempt, and we're going to try to live stream a little bit more often in the new year. But yeah, this is the last stream for this year, because again, I'm just trying to get out a catalog so that I can elevate my content, level you guys up, right? And then we can all have the same frame of mind. And then going into the new year, I'm probably going to focus a lot on building the community, which is Base Nation. All right, that's why you guys are tuning in right now. So the community, I don't really want to talk too much about it, but basically, in a nutshell, it's just a place for men to meet other like-minded individuals who are trying to level up. And because it's difficult to find good men out there who are, not brainwashed or blue pill or, still stuck in their own ways, and, they're simps or whatever, right? I mean, it's hard to be friends with those kinds of guys, especially if you're trying to get out of that. And believe me, I was there too. I was definitely like blue pill when it came to dating, not when it came to life. I was definitely a different beast when it came to life. I just wish I took that same mentality and put it towards women too, because like, again, it would have helped me had I, woke up from that reality sooner. Anyway, so subscribe to the channel, like and comment, so it helps the algorithm, helps get this information out to people just like you. And yeah, my book is almost done. I have that one chapter that I'm rewriting, and then yeah, it's called Break Her Bed, Not Her Heart. It's going to be, an average man's guide on how to get into relationships and keep one, because not everyone is out here trying to be a player and run a harem and all that kind of stuff, right? We're trying to build legacy. We want a wife, children, and all that, right? And it's okay to want that as a goal. It's all right. I mean, don't get scared, because as long as you're doing everything right and correctly, you can do this. You can do this marriage thing and relationship thing correctly, as long as you're awake, okay, and you know what you're doing and you're making all the right decisions according to bettering the family, okay, and all that stuff. All right. So that's pretty much all the housekeeping. I want to go over some stats in terms of, and this is all going to be post sexual revolution. Okay, sexual revolution was, I think, like, let's just put a number on it, like let's say 1960 ish. Okay, that's when that was the advent of hormonal birth control as well, and then later on, you'll start to see, you know, what do you call it? Abortion laws come into to play as well. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about all that, how that affects, certain areas, like geopolitically, but also in here in the West, how, interracial couples are either, adding to the statistics of divorce, or are they helping the statistics. So we'll take a look into all that stuff as well, and then what types of races like to date each other, and so on and so forth. And then after that, we're going to talk a little bit about, some of the buzzwords that these girls or these females are going to be, learning when they go into college or university and stuff like that. Okay, so unfortunately, there's nothing that we can do in terms of, unless you guys are, what is it? I mean, on a municipal level or a federal level or something like that, in terms of the government end, if you guys are working in that capacity, then yes, you can make changes and, help reshape some of the laws that, affect men in terms of, you know, marriage. Then by all means, keep on that fight. But for the most of us, we're not going to be doing that, right? Not a lot of us have the time to even think about going into politics and changing laws. Okay, we're like trying to figure out how to make more money, right? And so, um, we're going to get into a little bit of all that, and it's important to know because, again, if you're a guy like me who, prefers dating younger women, let's say, um, they're gonna come to you maybe at some point with these types of remarks, or their friends or something like that encourage her to, be part of, like, this social justice warrior category or whatever, right? So whenever, like, worldly things happen or whatever, they go, storm the picket lines and start whatever. Okay, it's good to know. Okay, because sometimes you'll see, you know, a woman who says they're completely conservative in their values and they believe in family and yada yada yada, right? But then in her actions and in the way that she presents herself to the world, she's completely liberal, right? So, anyways, what am I trying to say here? It's good to know all these things, okay? It's good to know all these things, especially when you're a single guy out there dating, figuring out whether or not, going outside of your race is even plausible or feasible for you, okay? And I think as an Asian man, I feel comfortable talking about it. But if for whatever reason someone wants to get, touchy about some of the things I talk about here, then the stream is definitely not for you. So the door is over there. You guys can get out. But for the ones who are definitely curious, okay, I am going to be talking a little bit about some sensitive things here. Okay, Asians and blacks and whites. Okay, they're going to be some statistics in here. Okay, that we're gonna have to talk about a little bit. Okay, because we live here in the West, and as you can see, it's either we assimilate or we go back to our homeland, okay, and deal with the problems there. And for those of you guys who are aware, I am South Korean by descent, but I was born in Canada. Okay, I was born in Toronto, Canada, right in the heart, and I am a Canadian citizen. So as you can see, I've assimilated to life here in Canada. Okay, I grew up playing hockey, but as funny as it is, English was kind of like my second language. So I grew up kind of like a Korean kid until I was like 3 or 4, and then I was forced to kind of like learn English after that. So why do I say that? Well, because if I were to assimilate back in South Korea, and we're going to talk a little bit about something about some of the issues going on over there, because it kind of relates to something that's going on here in the West. Okay, usually when I talk about the West, I'm usually just talking about the U.S. Okay, it's hard to find statistics like this in Canada. Um, so most of the stuff I talk about is usually just targeted towards America, because y'all have the population, right? Canada's population is only like what, 30 something million, 37 or 38 last time I checked, and then America has like 330 million. Okay, so we're going to be talking more so along that when I talk about the West. Okay, but all of that does affect some of the stuff that's happening in South Korea, which is the low fertility rate. Okay, but all this stuff is gonna, like I said, is all gonna come full circle. All right, we're gonna talk about it. Okay, let's get some stats out of the way. And hold on, let me just make sure that I am streaming live here, and we're good to go. Okay, all right, yeah, we are good to go, and my mic is working. Okay, good. All right, just don't want to start a whole stream and then freaking my mic is not working. Okay, all right, so these are research. This is statistics that I got from the Pew Research Center. So hopefully these are accurate, but they seem to be fairly new, considering the date here. I got 2015. Okay. All right. So in terms of all newlyweds, okay, 17% of all newlyweds in 2015 had a spouse of a different race. And that's 5x since 1967, which is what I marked here for the sexual revolution. So what happened prior to the sexual revolution? Let's talk about it. Basically, there's blacks stuck with blacks, whites stuck with whites, but I'm sure there was a few couples here and there that wanted to swirl, and then that caused all the uproar, and all this violence probably happened towards both races, because it was frowned upon. Like if a black man were to marry a white woman, or vice versa, a white woman wanted to marry a black man, they would probably be frowned upon in the community, because that stuff wasn't really it wasn't really allowed, or wasn't really frowned upon until after the sexual revolution. Like I said, when women were able to take hormonal birth control, they were able to take back power of some of their reproductive sexual rights, which is sort of a band-aid situation for women when it came to reproductive let's say privilege, let's say, okay, or responsibility, reproductive responsibility. So it nearly 5x since 1967, and black people went from intermarrying about only 5% of the time to about 18% of the time, and then whites went from about 4% to about 11%. So as you can see, black people did the most intermarrying in that time period, as opposed to whites. Okay. Asians and Hispanics are most likely to intermarry, though. Okay, so despite, oh, sorry, I have the stats up, going from lowest to highest. My bad, guys. So actually blacks and whites were the lowest. So white people are the lowest to intermarry. Blacks are the second lowest to intermarry. Asians and Hispanics are actually the most likely to intermarry. So Asians, my peoples, all right, 29% of them are in intermarriages. So a third of Asian couples, a third of newlyweds of Asian descent are intermarriages. Okay, so that's good to know. And then Hispanics are 27%. So just under the Asians. Okay, so Hispanics and Asians are most likely to intermarry, whereas white people were the least, and then black people were just right after that. Okay, so among 39% of the Hispanics, though, are U.S. born. For Asians, it's 46%. So what that means is that, let's say for the Asians who were U.S. born, 46% of them. So about half of the Asians who are so about, let's say there's 10 marriages in Asians, 10 Asian marriages, about half of them were, so a third of them are intermarriages, and about half of those are from US born. Okay, so that's what it means. I know I just said a lot of numbers there. So basically, out of the 30% of intermarriages that Asians have, okay, half of those are among people who were born in the US, and then the other half are those who weren't born in the US. Actually, 54% of that, I should note that it's only 46 and 50. So what it's saying is that the FOBI Asians, okay, are most likely to intermarry. Okay? FOBI Asians that just come to the West, okay? They were born over there, but they come to the West, all right? 54% of them are most likely to intermarry, and only 46% of them are US born. Okay. Interesting to know, right? I'm not here to talk about whether any of this stuff is bad or good just yet. I'm just talking about stats as numbers, right? It's just good to know the numbers, all right? For black males, okay, so now we're gonna break it down. So now we have some overall statistics of the race, and now we're gonna break it down in terms of men and women. Okay, so for black males, they are twice as likely to intermarry, so about 24%, whereas black women are only 12%. So what they're saying is that black men are most likely to date outside of their race, whereas black women prefer dating within their race. This seems to be the true for Asians. Okay, so Asian women run to get intermarried. I have here. So about 36% to 39% of Asian women, okay, in 1980, it says, are intermarried. Whereas Asian men are only 21%. So they're less likely. So just like how the black woman is less likely to date outside of her race, the Asian man is less likely as well to date outside of his race. So he prefers Asian women, whereas Asian women prefer dating outside of their race. Okay. What is it here? Whites and Hispanics are similar between men and the women. So in terms of the percentage of men and women of whites and Hispanics that like to get intermarried, they're about the same. It says here intermarriage is more common among those who are college educated, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you don't speak the language and you're brand new to the country, maybe you're not smart enough to go to college, okay? And then what happens at college is, if you are smart enough to go, what happens at college is you meet all kinds of different people, especially you're going to be exposed. Let's say you're a woman from Russia and you come to the US, you're going to be exposed to people from like South America and Canada and all these people, right? And they're probably most likely in your class. And so when you're intermingling with these people in class, then the higher likelihood it is, for you guys to hook up or whatever. Okay, but for those who are not college educated, then intermarriage is less common. Okay, so that makes a lot more sense. You'll see a push. This is probably why you see a push for women. Why women, like your mom, will push their daughters to go to school and get and I guess women will push their sons, I guess, to go do the doctor lawyer thing more so, whereas like I think it's just for women it's like just go get married, you know what I mean? Especially in the Asian culture, that's how it is. Okay, I would argue, all right, so now those are some statistics, all right? I think I've covered a lot of them. You don't want to get inundated with statistics, but we kind of have a gist of what types are likely to go with what types, right? Okay, I would argue now, hold on. I would argue that interracial couples, okay, it's hard to do. I think it's extremely hard to do. Now, It's not that I'm against them. All right. It's not that I'm against them. It's just extremely hard to do. Um, when you have a partner that comes from a different racial background, there's going to be a lot of different problems that arise when it comes to these things. Okay. Um, so let's talk a little bit about them. Um, it's 20 minutes in. Okay, let me see if I can get through these pretty fast. And then we'll save the last 20 minutes for all this other stuff. Okay. So interracial marriage, in my opinion, are hard to do. I think that's why you see a lot of divorces. But let's break down some of the challenges, okay? So, for one, I don't think, there's not as much racism as it was back in the 60s, probably, when there was like black schools and white schools still back then. Um, Now it's a little bit more less, I would say, societal prejudice. I would say there's less of that. Okay. But you'd be surprised. I mean, I've heard of stories where, an Asian, like my Asian friend who's a girl will come to me and she dates, outside of her race, right? Not obviously not a surprise because we just talked about that. Um, but she'll still get like hostile views from other Asian men, right? Like kind of like the Asian guys are like, "Yo, you can't date our girls" or something like that or whatever. You know what I mean? So these dudes will like stare at them or whatever, or even like make comments under their breath. Let's say, okay. I wouldn't say there's much overt hostility as there was, like I said, back in the day. But I could see that. I could see some Asian guys being like, fuck you, don't date our women and that kind of stuff, right? I can see that. All right. But I would see, that as one of the challenges that interracial couples will find. And that's the most common. Again, another one is their own cultural differences. Like, so for example, like, you know, there's just certain things in the Korean culture that it's hard to explain to somebody outside of the Korean culture, to understand it, right? So it's just very, like, it's very nuanced, and it doesn't mean that those disparities can't lead to, understanding later on, right? It just doesn't mean that it's just going to be another um, obstacle for you guys, okay? Because again, cultural backgrounds, like I said, they're I mean, I live in a melting pot, okay? Canada over here, like especially BC now here in the West, like everything is pretty much like it's what they say, the brown is browned, right? The browning of America. Um, it's a melting pot, okay? And so there's not much in terms of cultural differences here because everyone just grows up the same way here now. Um, but there's still some of that, immigrant kind of like vibe left over in terms of like that. Um, and then another problem that leads to that is like, let's say my dad, when he came over here, he had, a vision for his sons to get married to Korean women, let's say, right? And outlive his legacy and his name will pass on and so on and so forth, right? And so he has this expectation in his head. And let's just say he's like very conservative about them, right? He's very traditional about them and he's very like, let's say, hard-headed and stern, which my dad was never any of the above. My dad was such a free-flowing, loving, generous man, and he never really cared about whether or not I was dating a black girl or a white girl, or it didn't really matter to him. Okay, but I'm just saying, let's say he was on the opposite end of that spectrum, right? And he was very hard on me, and he was very disapproving of any type of interracial partnership that I would bring in, let's say. Okay, that would be tough for him. Okay, and that would be tough on me, and that would be tough on the relationship. So that could be challenging. All right. So again, I could see why, there's a lot of breakdown in the family with a lot of east west type things, because it's done differently over in the east. Okay, the west is, and that's where again it's, I should do a stream about that. I probably will. For immigrants who are assimilating and stuff like that, who maybe are aligned with conservative values, it's not gonna fly too well out here, because like minorities are viewed as liberal, and they're more affirming of like racial inequality and all that stuff, right? So, and they're more about like social justice and all these kinds of things, where a guy like me who's Asian, let's say, who grew up completely conservative, marriage, had values, all those kinds of things, believed in family and legacy, right? A guy like me wouldn't necessarily, when people look at me, they would be like, oh yeah, he's on the left, right? But when they wouldn't really necessarily believe that I have conservative values, right? Just because of those stereotypes. um so I think I might do a stream on how like the immigrant, like the assimilated, the immigrant that comes here, the second generation is like, what are we supposed to do, right? Like, we're not really Korean, but we're also not really Canadian, so it's like, what are we supposed to do, right? And I talk about in my coaching how you should pick a side, like definitely pick who you want to be and stick by it. Okay, so don't go back and forth pretending like you're like you're Korean or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's either you're one or the other, so you don't get confused about who you are, and other people don't get confused of what stance that you are as well. So like when I look at my kind of family, like when I look at my family, um, some are assimilated and some are not. Okay, and I'm not passing any judgment on them. I'm just saying, like, these types of expectations can lead to trouble within your interracial couple or whatever, like if you choose to date interracially. Okay. um and I'm just going over these challenges because I'm not really trying to deter you, but I'm trying to make you understand how much more effort you need to put into one, right? Because people get into interracial marriages thinking like, oh yeah, it's the same thing, right? It's actually not. You have to do way more to keep that relationship healthy. So I talk about all these things just to highlight them, so it brings it into your awareness. Maybe you're in an interracial marriage right now. Maybe you're in an or thinking about dating outside of your race, right? Um, you have to expect these things, because if you have children, and we're going to talk about this right now, when you have children, um, the experience of that children is going to be shaped by both your cultural identities. Okay, because when you have kids, so there's something primal that happens to you, and then you go back to like how you were raised as a child, and usually the way that you were raised comes from a deep lineage and history of how moms did that back in the day. Okay, and it's been passed down from time after time after generation after generation. Okay, and yes, throughout culture there can be similarities, right? I mean, like, how hard is it to raise a baby? But you'll notice that from culture to culture there are little differences. Okay, and those types of things are going to shape the child's experience. And so having to talk to your significant other about those kinds of things, and it's going to put some pressure on how they conform to society. So for example, me, when I was all confused, am I Korean or am I fucking Korean Canadian, right? Like, what am I? Because those kinds of thoughts started to rise in my head when people ask me like, hey, have you ever been to Korea? And I'm like, no, I've actually never been back. And I've been scared to go back, because a lot of my friends who did go over there, they would get a lot of like, what is it? Like cut eye, or the Koreans there would look at Koreans like me who couldn't speak the language all that well, right? Because I mean, we grew up in Canada or somewhere else other than Korea, and when we're trying to like interact with them in Korean, they just look down on us, right? As if we're like this white version of a Korean person, right? So like, even there's even racism within Korean people. So like I said, it's just difficult trying to navigate that. Okay. And when people give up, I get it. Like, there's gonna be like, I don't know. I wonder if they do statistics like this. that'd be good to know if they did statistics on interracial marriages and whether or not they have a kid and how that affects the kids and stuff like that. Because I'd be interested to know, right? Like what racial identity does the kids take on after that, right? Like what, I don't know. I'd be curious to know. Anyways, those are kinds of things that could be either emotionally taxing on the relationship, but then also bring confusion towards the kids. Okay, so those are things that you got to be aware of. All right. So children's experiences and then stereotypes. Okay, we've talked about. And then there's also kind of like this the like the area that you're in. So like for example, in the West here, it's more, what is it? Accepted, right? So if you were an Asian woman dating a black guy, it's more accepted here. You know, we see the Blasian couple very often here, and it's not really frowned upon or anything like that. We see the Blasian kids here and there popping up and stuff like that. So it's common. Um, but let's say that same Korean Asian woman was dating a black guy over in China, let's say, that's going to be tough for them, right? So we got to think about the geographical context of like where you are and the social context of that as well too. Is it going to be hard for you to be in an interracial marriage over there? Probably a little bit difficult, right? And so that's something to consider, right? Like if you're, like say like an Asian guy, let's say in China, or an Asian guy in Korea, let's say you want to date a black girl, right? You're gonna, things like that do get frowned upon, and there's what do they call it? I hate sounding like a wokey, but there is an inherent racism when it comes to these kinds of things, right? Like towards other cultures, not towards just black people. I'm just saying like to other cultures, okay? And it's always going to be like that. It's always like we're programmed to identify with what's similar to us, so if we see somebody who looks like they're Korean, if I see somebody who looks like they're Korean, I'm gonna feel less what is it, threatened by that person as opposed to if it's somebody outside of my culture. Okay, just how it is. But for the most of us who have kind of been conditioned to live with other races their whole lives, um, a lot of this stuff is going to be very easy to kind of let go, because again, you're probably going to assimilate to more Western values, let's say, and you're going to raise those kids probably in the in the Western way. So but just like I said, it doesn't hurt to figure all this stuff out prior to you go out there and you start dating. um yeah, so I would argue, like I said, it's hard to do for all of this, all of the challenges that I just stated just now, right? You're gonna run into a lot of things, and not to mention like the kids are gonna get confused. So you're gonna have these discussions with the children a little bit more often, when it comes to like race, gender, and it's you know what I mean. It gets a little tough when you have these complex um, topics and you just want to keep it simple for your children to kind of understand. But anyhow, you guys are we're going way too ahead right now, because like for now we're not even thinking about children right now. All right, for most of you guys, my audience, like it's mostly guys who are like 25 to 35, 20 to 35. um, you guys shouldn't even be thinking about long-term marriages or having kids until you're at least 30. Start having those thoughts come into your awareness around 30. But until then, just know what the playing field is. Just understand what it is, and it'll help you kind of like, okay, so for example, how can we take this theory and these stats into the play field, into the playground? All right, so let's say you're a white guy. You already know, and so Asian women love to date outside of their race. And maybe you're a white guy and you've never dated an Asian woman, right? And you're probably like, well, Do Asians even like white guys? Well, fuck yeah, they do, right? You could see 30% of Asian women like to intermarry. Okay. How am I going to take that? Well, so start swiping on more Asian chicks on your dating app, or let's say, or start hitting on more Asian girls, right? You'd be surprised at some of the responses that you get. Or let's say you're, I don't know, a black guy, right? Same thing. Uh, you know that Hispanics, right, like to date outside of their race, right? Maybe you go and approach a big booty Latina girl, right? And you're just like, well, like, all I'm saying is like just take this information, understand for what it is, okay? Asian women, Hispanic women are most likely to intermarry, okay? So if you know that, then Asians and Latinas are probably the ones that you're probably gonna like, try to hit up on more often than not. Okay, does that make sense? Right? Okay. I mean, I read somewhere that you got to treat your audience like they're fucking in grade 6, but I don't like to do that because I like to think that my audience who listens to me is very intelligent, and they come across streams like this and they listen because they're like, wow, this guy is fucking bringing facts. Not only that, he's bringing facts and applying that in the real world with game. How do we sift through this knowledge and then apply it, and then also be savvy with it, because like you don't want to be spewing any of this stuff out to your girl. She doesn't care. She doesn't want to know. When you start talking about this stuff, her pussy, her vagina starts drying up, and you're not going to get anywhere near that. Okay? So remember, girls just like to have fun, all right? Keep it fun with her. But this is more or less important for guys to know, because again, guys, we're more logical. We need information, right? We're more rational creatures. So we need information. We need to make the best decision based off of the information that's given. And if we are making poor choices, right? Like let's say you're into white girls, but you know that white girls are the least likely to intermarry. Like you're going after the holy grail then, right? It's harder for you to hit on a white chick because they're less likely to intermarry. You get what I'm saying, guys? You guys understand what I'm saying here? It's not to say that white chicks aren't, what is it? They're not willing to intermarry. I'm just saying they're least likely to. All right. I think we talked a little bit about the stats, the troubles, the problems you could face when actually dating interracially. Now where are we at? Are we at 40 minutes yet? Okay, yeah, we're about there. So the last 20 minutes, I want to talk about some of the buzzwords that you're going to hear when it comes to this kinds of stuff. And it's okay to like talk about this stuff with your boys. It'll definitely figure out, like, if you ever like curious to know whether some of your friends are either liberal or conservative, when you start talking about these types of things, right, like these wokey concepts, right, and it's coming from them, then they're more liberal, if anything. It gets kind of touchy, you don't really want to bring politics within your friends, because like, your friends like are your friends. You love them regardless of whether they lean left or whether they lean right or whatever. I mean, but yeah, either way. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about these buzzwords now, and you're going to hear a little bit about some of them, obviously, in other circles and stuff, like other echo chambers and stuff like that. But the reason why I'm streaming here either on Rumble is because my views are like a little bit more conservative. They're a little bit more right leaning when it comes to dating and relationships. But you'll hear a lot of wokey left types of girls talk about these types of things. They might even bring it up in a conversation. But again, this is how you kind of like diffuse and don't talk about this stuff with your girl, especially somebody who you're really interested in, because again, it might blow your chances of getting laid or whatnot. So you definitely want to smash at least once. Okay. But when she does start bringing up these kinds of topics, then you could start putting her in, the just for fun category. You're not going to take her seriously. Nothing for marriage or anything like that. So, okay. So you're going to hear things like intersectionality. Okay. You're going to hear things like critical race theory. Okay. You're going to hear things like it's the patriarchy's fault. Okay. When you start hearing things like that, you're dealing with a girl who's most likely on the left. And again, sometimes these girls are really hot and you want to smash, but you're not going to take them seriously. So, in order for you to get that prerogative completed, soldier, you're not going to talk about Fight Club, okay? And so, certain things are just better left unsaid. And if she's yapping her mouth about all these kinds of things like DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and critical race theory, and intersectionality, and all these things, okay, just know you're dealing with that type of girl, and more or less likely you're just going to put her in the fun category, and you're not going to take her seriously for marriage, because I don't want to go through maybe on another stream about why these types of wokey left types of girls are not marriage material. Okay. I did a little bit about that on the red flag episode, but more or less you kind of want to stay away from them in terms of long-term prospects. Okay. You can have all your fun with them by all means. Okay. But never really take them too seriously. What do they say? What does Myron say? I think he says like recreational use only. That's what he says. Okay. So critical race theory is not really here. Let's actually just watch a video of it. Okay. I'm going to queue up this video so we can watch it. And I think this lady breaks it down pretty good, but this is not what you're going to hear in these circles. So hold on. Where's my stream? So yeah, what are you guys doing for New Year's? You guys have any plans? I think I'm gonna go on like a 72-hour water fast. See how that goes. Because I'm actually I'm quitting intoxicants next year. No weed, no alcohol. All right, cold turkey. So we'll see what happens. No weed, no alcohol, no drugs, no psychedelics, nothing. All right, for a whole entire year. All right, that's what I'm doing. Okay. This is the video. Whoops. This is the video I want to show you guys. Let me know if you guys can't hear it. Hopefully the sound is good. But what is critical race theory? She's going to answer it.
Let's just start with a basic definitional question. When you hear critical race theory over and over again, what should people understand? How do you define CRT?
So I first want to just make a distinction between CRT, which is a theoretical framework that I learned in graduate school or read about in graduate school, versus teaching about race and racism in American history critically. So critical race theory is a framework. It's a theoretical framework that was developed in the 1980s by legal scholars to help us understand how it is that structural and racial disparities endure in our society and how that is actually engendered in some of our laws and policies. And so the idea was to get us to think systemically, as opposed to just thinking that racism manifests by individuals just mistreating each other, that there are actual structures in our society that create these different kinds of racial gaps and racial disparities economically, in terms of housing, in terms of education. And so that's what they do, is that they actually show us how how laws that are supposed to be neutral actually can promulgate or support racial disparities. That's a theoretical framework. I think what we're talking about today, though, is some contestation and conflict over how you teach about race, racial hierarchies.
Okay, so that's the key right there. There's a clear distinction she's making right now. And I think she did a great job of explaining it. So basically what she said, what she learned in graduate school, is that CRT, it was created by a bunch of lawyers who saw disparities within the legal system when it came to, I guess, judgments or whatever. They saw that there was some inherent racism when it came to certain things like that, and that certain laws, sort of I guess are racist in that sense. The wording is not so racist. They'll use wording that obviously covers up some of those undertones, but what she's saying is that these lawyers have discovered. So for example, back in the day there were areas marked white and marked black, okay? And in those white areas there wouldn't be allowed any blacks, let's say. This is like back in the day. And let's say the white area is, bourgeoisie. They're like the upper middle class, let's say, right? And the black area is low income, slave, or poverty stricken people, right? The white people would create a clause, let's say, in their thing saying, we will not allow buildings to be built in the white neighborhood for low income individuals. Okay, so that wording right there is not racist, right? We're just basically saying low income individuals are not allowed to build their homes in the white neighborhood. Okay, so critical race theory, what these lawyers figured out is that, yeah, that is kind of inherently racist, especially if the lower poverty people were minorities, right? Not just black people, but let's say they were like, Hispanics and Asian people in there. Okay, it would be harder for them to meet, upper middle class white people to help, I guess, advance some of their careers via nepotism. Let's say, it would be harder for that company, or for that, lack of a better word, the poor people, to meet the rich people to create those connections. And so what she's saying is that critical race theory was that. What she's getting into, and what you're going to hear a lot of other people talk about when it comes to CRT, is that they are complaining about how racism or race is being taught in the schools. Okay, so that's, understandable when you think about race theory and things like that. They think that critical race theory is something that it's like some wokey left person created, and it's, let's get the white man and whatever, right? Like, no, it was a finding that some litigators found in some of the laws that are somewhat, I guess, if any sane intellectual person would look at that and be like, okay, yeah, it seems like you're trying to keep, black people out, let's say, of the neighborhood, right? So that's what she's talking about here.
Critically, racism in schools and society. And so the two are being conflated.
And so when you
So yeah, hold on, let me just go back to. So yeah, whenever you hear a girl talk about critical race theory and stuff like that, and then she starts talking about all these other nonsense jibber jabber words or whatever, that's what she's talking about. You obviously know what it is, and you can kind of put that to rest if you're ever in a conversation, let's say, and you had to kind of diffuse that. You put that to rest. Yes, it should be a discussion about how race is taught within schools, for sure. It shouldn't all be under one person's ideology. It should be for the benefit of the children, not for the ideology, right? So okay, so that's one topic. Another topic is intersectionality. So women will, let me just talk about, share my screen here. Another thing is intersectionality. She's going to talk a little bit about. Let me add that to my screen. So what is intersectionality? And it is a feminist analytical framework for understanding how individuals' various social and political identities result in unique combinations of discrimination and privilege. Okay. Now, I mean, kudos to the feminists, right? Like, they're very, look at this. I always say that feminists are good for pointing out these types of inequalities, right? Like, if there's ever like some sort of racial ambiguity, you definitely can count on a feminist woman to figure that out for you. But again, it doesn't mean that you need to give in to feminism because you think that, oh, they created an idea that actually does make sense, but it doesn't, like equality, egalitarianism, it doesn't make sense because life is unfair. Nothing is equal. Men and women are different, and life, yeah, it's just, it'll never be equal, and we're never going to have some egalitarian utopia. Okay, so it's good to know these types of things, because where does it come from, right? If you ever caught yourself talking about these types of things, you got to stop it. Just stop it. All right. It's good to know though. Okay, it's good to know, because these are things that, again, this is what they're teaching in schools now, in university, college, and whatnot. Okay. So although the idea does sound great and all, and it does, whatever, outline the fact that all of this stuff relates to each other in some sort of way, and I agree, but it's just confusing, in my opinion. And anything that is confusing, I'm not a fan of. Like, what's that quote? If you can't say something simply, then you don't understand it. Right? So intersectionality it's just chaos to me. Seems like chaos. Anyways, that's another thing that we need to be aware of. Okay, and then you hear another thing, sorry guys. I need like a Jamie. Okay, there we go. No, it's not shared now. Okay, there we go. So identity politics. You're going to hear this a lot as well too. Identity politics is politics based on a particular identity, such as race, nationality, religion, gender, sexual orientation, social background, caste, and social class. This, in a nutshell, basically, look at Trump, right? Trump was the cisgendered white man that the woke left was trying to demonize and basically bring every straight white male down. Okay, and they had it tough for a long time. And then Trump comes around and all those guys start rallying behind Trump, right? So that's identity politics in a nutshell, right? Trump was the guy that identifies with a certain demographic of people within the thing. So, like, when you think of Trudeau, let's say, right? What do you guys think of, right? What do you guys like? Socialists, Marxists, communists, right? Like that's what a lot of people on the right would say about Trudeau. So like in terms of identity politics, he's representing himself in that in that light, right? I think I've heard him say on multiple occasions that he's like, let's get the record straight, guys. I am a male feminist, he would say, right? So you could see him, SJWing a lot of, women's rights and women's issues and so on and so forth. So he'll champion all of those things. And then, so in terms of identity politics, are there white guys that are male feminists? Hell yeah, that's what we call the blue pill alpha, right? The blue pill alpha is the male feminist, right? They're just plugged in, yet they have no clue like what reality is. And they're gonna those are the types of guys that actually I feel bad for, because if they ever get zeroed out, they're gonna have a difficult time coming to terms with the red pill and coming to terms with the truth. Trust me, I was there. I was the most fucking blue pill. All right, I wouldn't say I was the most, but I was pretty damn blue pill. And what that did for me was it hit a lot of these blind spots that I'm talking about here. All these things that these girls that I was dating already knew about. They already understood it to a T. Okay, they understood it to they knew their mark. They knew what type of guy I was, and they were going to extract all, whatever they could out of me. And I'm sure a lot of girls are going to be like, yo, Rob, who hurt you? Right? Well, I hurt myself, all right, for not knowing this type of shit. I should have known this stuff. Had I armed myself with this type of information, because like I was the type of guy, like, yeah, politics are whack. It's like, who cares? I'm not gonna like worry myself too much about this kind of stuff because it's not important. Yet girls, a lot of women, they fucking learn this shit in college. They learn this shit in university. And so they kind of have, a step on, well, they had a step on me, that's for sure. When it came to certain issues like this, I had a lot of blind spots. And if you have a lot of blind spots, you're going to think you're doing things in the right way until those blind spots get revealed or you get zeroed out or whatever, what have you, something happens. And then you find the red pill, and then you're like, wow, that's what they were all talking about. That's what they were really, getting all angry about, and, getting the incels all riled up and whatnot. Like, yeah, this is what we were talking about here. All right. So how long have I been blabbering for? 56 minutes, not bad. Okay. So I try to keep these things for about an hour. So if you guys are here sticking it out with me, shout out to y'all. Shout out to y'all. Where are we at? It's not too bad. There's like a few guys just kind of like listening in, randomly, not saying anything, but that's cool. All right. So yeah, I was going to talk a little bit about something else, but I think I'm going to save that for another stream. Yeah, I'm going to save that for another stream. And how that affects. I thought I was going to talk about it today. I was going to talk about the browning of America and how that affects certain issues when it comes to geopolitics, whether for example, the situation in South Korea, right, the lowest fertility rate in the world, by far. Okay, and that's an issue for Koreans, where it's like, and it's been an issue for the Korean government for a very long time. They spent billions of dollars trying to fix this, and women are fed up with it. So it's a fight between feminism and conservatism. Okay, you're starting to see that new modern feminist wave of telling women to not have kids and hold it off. Don't get married until you're 30. Focus on the bag, do your career and all that, right? And women are coming around and saying that it's patriarchy that is the reason why, and patriarchy and capitalism is the reason why we don't want to have kids, because it's so expensive to have kids. And not only that, we don't want to be just limited to being housewives or whatnot, because we're not going to benefit from society and all these things. And so so there's just a back and forth between these two groups, and it's important to talk about, like I said, because this is the problem here in the West when we think about trying to do things in the Western way for relationships. And so some would argue that the Eastern way is better, but regardless, teach their own. Regardless, I'll cover all that on a different stream. So yeah. We're approaching the 1 hour mark. Okay, so shout out to y'all for making it through 2023. It's been quite the year, honestly, for me, and I'm glad that I'm out here again, creating content again. I feel back at home, doing the thing that I love, helping guys figure out this shit, because again, this is information I wish I had when I was going through hell in my 20s. And yeah, um, just stay tuned. There's going to be more to come, obviously. I want to do so much more, but again, I have a certain way of doing things, and it's because when I do go out there and I start creating different types of elevated content, a lot of people are going to think that I'm just spewing off um, like random tidbits that I heard on the internet or some shit like that, right? And I don't want people to say that to me. So if anything, when I do have debates or conversations, or my um, like I said, my content is more elevated, then I can refer people back to, oh, did you guys check out this stream? Was when I actually broke it down in more detail, and we talked a little bit about that specific topic. And so people will know that I'm not just some person spewing off random tidbits I heard on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube or wherever. I'm a guy who has been in the trenches learning this stuff, reading books. Okay. Yeah, it took me, 6-7 years to figure all this shit out. And I've only kind of like scratched the surface. Okay. And again, I want to put more stuff of this, like more of this content out there, just to get a base and a foundation ready. It's like I'm building, I'm in the trenches right now. I'm building I'm building the hole. I'm gonna put up the foundation, right? Pour the concrete. I would say I'm at the pouring of the foundation right now. Okay, we're pouring the concrete, building the basement right now. I feel like that's where we're at. So yeah, I'm setting realistic expectations for myself. I'm not trying to, I know Rome wasn't built in a day, and I know I have a lot of content I need to get out. So I want to help people in this capacity. And once I'm able to, get this type of information out there faster, more quicker for people, then all the merrier. Then I can get on with the things I want to do, because I want to create some entertainment type content as well. So without giving it away, I'm trying to create this channel as a variety show. So all this boring stuff, like I said, I'm getting it out of the way first. Okay, because it's boring. Nobody wants to listen about theory and relationship theory, which is it's important. You guys should know. That's why I'm getting it out of the way. But after that, it's going to be more kind of application based. So I'm going to be doing Side Hustle Saturdays. Okay, so Side Hustle Saturdays is going to be a segment where I show you guys, certain side hustles that are making money in the industry, and what I'm going to be putting it to work and putting all those methods to trial, and then you guys can watch along and see how successful they are or how much of a bust they are. Okay, so I think that'd be cool to kind of know. And then I'm also going to do a dating show. Not really a dating show, but I'm going to get hot girls to come in, and we're going to rate people's Instagrams. Okay, so we're going to get hot girls to come in, and then we're going to get them to rate your Instagram. So if you're a guy listening in right now and you want to get your Instagram rated or whatever, I'm going to get hot girls to rate guys' Instagrams. Okay, so you can hear it from women and what they're thinking from the horse's mouth, not just what I'm telling you guys. Because I could be like, yeah, don't do this, don't do that, da 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 da, and you could be like, well, how do you know, right? Like you're not a girl or whatever. Well, so just to avoid all that, I'm gonna get some of my female friends, right? We're gonna get them together, and then we're gonna take a whole bunch of Instagram profiles from dudes, most likely dudes from Base Nation, and then so if you guys want to ever get your Instagram rated by hot girls, then join Base Nation. All right. So that's all I'll say about that. So stay tuned. I have a lot of stuff that I'm working on in the future. I just don't want to say too much because people might be taking my ideas and stuff like that. So yeah. And then the book will be out next year. So there's a lot of stuff. Okay. But again, this is just the boring stuff. So hopefully you guys just stick with me for a bit. All right. We'll get through it. Okay. This is all the rigorous shit that nobody wants to talk about and nobody wants to do. But again, afterwards, it's going to get a lot more fun. I know some pretty like amazing women out there that are doing their thing. Okay, and you're gonna start to hear from them what they think of you when it comes to your Instagram, right? Because you're gonna think one thing of yourself, right? You're gonna be like, yo, my Instagram is lit, right? Like any girl who sees this, they're gonna get wet, and it's like, no, bro, you're gonna get roasted. So get ready for that, and take constructive criticism because again, it's only gonna help you in your dating career or your dating trajectory or whatever. If you especially want to get married and stuff. And it's going to make it seem like, ugly girls, their opinions don't matter. But it's better to get the opinion of a hot girl. So I'm going to do that. So nobody take that idea, all right? I'm going to get hot girls rating guys' Instagrams. And yeah, so that's all in the new year. All right, so this is the last stream. I'm not going to do anything for tomorrow or the next day. So hopefully you guys have some fun, but not too much fun. All right, make sure you guys stay focused on your goals. And I will be back again in the new year, most likely on Tuesday the 2nd. I'll probably come out with another stream then. But until then, I'm going to be starting my 72-hour water fast now. All right, so we'll see how that goes. Wish me luck, y'all. All right, guys, I'm out of here and hope you guys enjoyed this stream. Hope you guys have a happy new year, happy holidays. Stay with it. All right, make sure you guys go into the gym, make money, learn muscles. Learn game, all that stuff. All right, and just crush it out there in the new year. Okay, I will see you guys. Peace. Robb Based signing off.